Hi, I'm Tom Clark, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. What does it mean to be humble? What does that look like in real life? And perhaps most importantly, how does it apply to you and me? Consider the example of Stephen, the first martyr we have recorded in the New Testament church. His powerful preaching greatly upset the crowd, and in a rage they began to stone him. Our verse for today focuses on Stephen's remarkable reaction, and I believe it's a teachable moment for all of us. It's found in Acts 7, verse 60, where we read, "Then he knelt down and cried out with a loud voice, 'Lord, do not charge them with this sin.' And when he had said this, he fell asleep." Wow! His final words, they weren't filled with anger or condemnation. It was a heartfelt prayer for his murderers. "Lord, do not charge them with this sin." That's humility. Would you and I be able to respond in that way? I was fascinated by a story one lady shared about her father and something that happened when she was a little girl. And I think it's another example of humility in action. She said her dad came home for lunch one day from work, but he was dirty and covered with soot. He didn't say anything about it. He just changed his clothes, got ready, and went back to work. Later on, she learned that as he had been on his way home for lunch, he passed a house that was on fire and no one was around. He had no way to put out the fire, but he wanted to see if anyone needed help, so he went in, and sure enough, there was an elderly woman on a walker desperately trying to get out. He helped her get out of the house, and she begged him to go get her little dog. So he went back into the house, found a little dog who wasn't terribly happy about a stranger picking him up, got him, brought him out. And by the time he arrived, the fire department was there. The woman was receiving the help that she needed. So he went home and changed clothes. When he went back to work, he saw a news crew out there interviewing a man in front of the house, but didn't think anything of it. The next morning, when the newspaper came out, he saw an article about the fire and the brave man who had rescued an elderly woman and her little dog, accompanied by a photo of the man they had been interviewing out front, a man who wasn't even around when her father had rescued the woman and her dog. You know, there are a lot of feelings you and I might legitimately have at that point. But what would we actually do? The woman said when her father saw the story, he just laughed and said, "It really doesn't matter. What mattered is that the woman and her dog were safe." And this lady concluded her story by saying, "To me, that is true humility." There are biblical examples, other biblical examples we could reflect on. John the Baptist, who said he had to decrease while Jesus Christ would increase. There was Elihu, who was a younger man, and he waited for his older friends to speak before he offered his thoughts to Job. Moses was described as more meek or more humble than anyone else. And of course, the ultimate example, Jesus Christ. He yielded his life to the Father every moment of his existence. He never sinned, was wrongfully accused, deserted by his friends, tortured, and ultimately crucified for us. Paul said this about Christ when he exhorted the Philippians to keep humility at the center of their conduct. He wrote, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men. Being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross." Paul also gave practical advice on how to be humble when he said in Philippians 2, verse 4, "Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." Being humble is sure easier said than done, but it is something we have to work on constantly. And perhaps it helps to keep these stories in mind to prove to ourselves that humility is possible. It is within our grasp. It's a vitally important quality that should characterize every Christian, and it should be there even at the threat of death, as it was for Stephen and for Jesus Christ. Humility is a huge topic. It's one that deserves a great deal of thought and prayer. But Perhaps it's time for each of us to take a careful look at ourselves and ask, how humble are we really?
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.